Your German surname may not be just a name. It may be a buried signal, a small mark passed from mouth to mouth, from church record to church record, from one generation to the next, long after the people who first carried it had vanished into the soil. Before Germany was Germany, there were no modern borders holding the land together. There were forests so deep they frightened Roman soldiers. There were rivers that acted like walls. There were hilltop forts, tribal kingdoms, sacred groves, war bands, old gods, Christian kings, and families moving through a dangerous world trying to survive. And somewhere inside that world, a name was spoken. Maybe it was used to identify where someone came from. Maybe it marked them as an outsider. Maybe it told others which people they belonged to. The Saxon, the Franke, the Bavarian, the Frisian, the Swabian. Over time, those labels hardened into surnames. And today, centuries later, some of those names may still be sitting quietly on birth certificates, passports, gravestones, and family trees. So if you have a German surname, listen carefully, because your last name may be carrying a memory older than modern Germany itself. And number one may connect to one of the strongest tribal identities in German history. Let's begin in the north, where the forests were cold, the warriors were feared, and one name became powerful enough to cross the sea. Number 10. Sachs or Sachsa. At first, it sounds simple, short, clean, ordinary, but behind it is a shadow much older than the modern world. Sachs and Sachsa can point toward the Saxons, one of the most famous Germanic peoples in European history. The Saxons were not just a small group hiding in the corner of the map. Their names spread across northern Germany, across old tribal lands, and even into Britain, where it became part of the Anglo-Saxon story. Imagine a time before street addresses, before national identity cards, before family names were fixed forever. A man leaves his homeland. He enters a new town. People do not know his father, his village, or his story, so they call him by what they recognize. The Saxon. Over time, that label becomes attached to his children, then to their children, then to people who may no longer remember the first man who carried it. That is how a simple surname can become a fossil of movement. If your name is Sachs or Sachsa, it does not prove every detail of your bloodline, but it may point toward Saxon land, Saxon identity, or a family once known by that ancient name. And that is where the mystery begins, because the Saxons were not just remembered for where they lived. They were remembered for resistance, migration, power, and survival. But there was another people whose name reached even deeper into Europe's future. Number 9. Frank or Frank. This name feels familiar. Almost too familiar. But that is the trick. Some names become so common that we stop hearing the thunder inside them. Frank and Frank may connect to the Franks, one of the most important Germanic peoples of the early Middle Ages. The Franks did not remain a forgotten tribe at the edge of history. They rose. They conquered. They built kingdoms. Their power helped shape the lands that would later become parts of France, Germany, and much of Western Europe. The word Frank has also been linked with ideas of freedom and openness. But beneath that meaning lies something harder, older, and more dangerous. A tribal identity that became royal. A people who moved from war bands to crowns. A name that crossed from bloodline into empire. Picture a family being marked as Frank in a world where identity could decide who trusted you, who feared you, and where you belonged. That name may have meant more than a place. It may have carried a reputation. And when a name like that survives, it does not survive empty. It carries echoes. The echo of old kings. The echo of borderlands. The echo of people who helped reshape Europe while most of the world was still writing its memories by firelight. But not all German surname clues point to empire. Some point to land, to mountains, to villages, to a region so proud that its identity still burns brightly today. Number 8. Bayer Bayer or Bayer. If you have one of these names, your surname may point toward Bavaria. But Bavaria is not just a modern region known for castles, beer halls, alpine beauty, and strong tradition. Behind Bavaria stands an older tribal memory tied to the Bavarii, a people who gave their name to the land. Think about what that means. A family name like Bayer may have once told others, this person came from Bavaria. Maybe an ancestor left the south and moved into another German-speaking region. Maybe they arrived in a new town and the locals named them by their origin. The Bavarian. That sounds harmless now. But in the old world, where dialect, dress, custom, and faith could separate one people from another, a name like that mattered. It told people where your roots were planted. It carried the smell of mountain air, church bells, old duchies, and family farms under heavy skies. Bavaria was not just a location. It was a memory system, a place where land and identity fused so strongly that the name could follow a family long after they left. And that is the strange power of surnames. They move with you. Even when your ancestors leave the village does not always leave them. But now we travel west, into a name that carries not just a region, but a whole personality. Number 7. Schwab or Schwab. This name may point to Swabian roots. Swabia is linked to the Alemannic world, to the southwest of Germany and nearby regions. But for many people, Swabian identity is not just geography. It is language, discipline, work, thrift, craftsmanship, stubborn pride, and a deep sense of belonging. A name like Schwab or Schwab may have begun when someone from Swabia moved elsewhere. They were not just Johann or Heinrich. They were the Swabian, and that label followed the bloodline. But here's what makes this name powerful. Swabia sits in the shadow of older tribal identities. Behind the region stands a deeper world of Alemannic people, old boundaries, and local speech that still carries traces of ancient separation. A surname like Schwab may feel practical, but underneath it, there's a hidden door. Open that door, and you do not just find a family. You find a region that refused to vanish. You find people who shape towns, crafts, farms, markets, and dialects. You find a local identity strong enough to survive kings, borders, wars, and centuries of change. And the deeper we go, the closer we get to a name that may carry the ancient tribal identity even more directly. Number 6. Alemann, Ailman, or Allman. This is where the story becomes unsettling, because the Alemanni were not just another tribe forgotten in old books. Their name became so powerful that in some languages, it became the word for Germany itself. In French, Germany is Allemagne. In Spanish, Alemania. Those words reach back to the Alemanni. Now imagine carrying a surname that sounds like that ancient tribal name. Alemann, Ailman, Allman. It feels like a whisper from a time before modern maps. The Alemanni were connected to the southwest, to lands that touch modern Germany, Switzerland, Alsace, and surrounding areas. Their identity was not neat. Ancient peoples were not always fixed like modern nations. They shifted, they fought, they mixed. They formed alliances. They disappeared into larger histories. But their name survived, and that survival is the revelation. Sometimes a tribe dies politically, but continues to live in language. Sometimes a people lose their kingdom, but leave their name behind. Sometimes the grave closes, but the surname keeps speaking. If your family name connects to Ailman, it may be pointing toward one of the oldest identity marks in the German-speaking world. Not just a place, a people, a name that other nations use to describe Germany itself. But now we leave the southwest and move north toward wind, sea, and a people known for independence. Number 5. Friese or Friese. These surnames may point to Frisian origin. The Frisians lived along the North Sea coast in regions connected with northern Germany and the Netherlands. Their world was not the deep forest world of the interior. It was a world of water, salt air, trade, storms, ships, marshes, and danger. The sea shaped them, and people shaped by the sea do not think like people shaped by mountains. The Frisians became known for their strong identity, their seafaring life, and their fierce sense of freedom. A name like Friese or Friese may have once marked someone as a Frisian, especially after moving away from the coast. Again, imagine the scene. A stranger arrives inland. His speech sounds different. His habits are different. His face carries the weather of the coast. People ask where he is from. He is the Frisian. The name stays. And centuries later, a descendant may carry it without ever smelling the North Sea wind that first gave it meaning. That is the haunting thing about ancestry. You can forget the place, but the place may not forget you. A Frisian surname carries a different kind of energy. It does not feel like a crown or castle. It feels like tidewater, trade routes, stubborn freedom, and people who lived at the edge of land and sea. But now we move back toward the center of Germany, where a surname may hide a much older tribal shadow. Number 4. Hess or Hesse. This name points toward Hesse, a region in central Germany. But behind Hesse, historians often connect the region with the ancient Chatti, a Germanic people known from Roman-era sources. This is where we must be careful. A surname like Hess does not automatically prove direct descent from the Chatti. History is more complicated than that. Families move. Names change. Regions absorb many peoples. But the name may still connect a family to a land whose roots reach into the ancient tribal world. And that is powerful enough. Because Hesse is not just a dot on a map. It is a place layered with centuries. Roman fear, forest settlements, medieval territories, family records, old roads, Vergaten gravis. If your surname is Hess or Hesse, it may point toward ancestors identified with that region. And that region carries memories older than many people realize. A name like Hess may be quiet, but it has depth. It is the kind of name that does not shout. It waits. It sits in records and lets the careful listener hear what others miss. A Central German name with ancient roots beneath it. And from there, we move into another central identity, one whose name still marks the land. Number 3. Thuring or Thüringer. These surnames may point toward Thuringian origin. The Thuringians were an early Germanic people whose names survived in Thuringia, a region in central Germany. Like many old peoples, their story was shaped by war, absorption, kingdoms, and changing powers. But their name remained. That matters, because history often erases people twice. First, it takes their power, then it takes their memory. But when a name survives in a surname, the erasure is not complete. Thuring or Thüringer may have once marked a person as someone from Thuringia. Maybe an ancestor left the region. Maybe he settled somewhere else. Maybe others called him the Thuringian, and that became the family name. Think of the emotional weight inside that. A person leaves home, maybe by choice, maybe because of hunger, maybe because of war, maybe because there was no future left in the village. They arrive somewhere new, and the only thing people know about them is where they came from. That origin becomes their identity. Then it becomes the inheritance of children not yet born. A surname like Thüringer can feel like a road leading back into dark forests, medieval struggle, and a people whose ancient name refused to die. But the next surname changes the story, because not every German surname points to a Germanic tribe. Some reveal the truth that many people do not expect. Germany was never made from one bloodline. Number 2. Wendt or Wendy. This name may point toward the Wends, a historical term used by German speakers for certain Slavic peoples living near or within eastern borderlands. And this is where the story becomes more honest and more powerful, because ancestry is rarely clean. It is not a straight line of one pure people untouched by time. It is rivers crossing. It is borderlands shifting. It is neighbors becoming enemies, then relatives. It is migration, marriage, conquest, trade, fear, faith, and survival. A surname like Wendt or Wendy may suggest a connection to Slavic communities or eastern frontier regions where Germanic and Slavic worlds met. For some viewers, that may be surprising, but should not be. The German story was shaped by many peoples. Germanic, Slavic, Celtic, Roman, Baltic, Jewish, and others. The land was never silent. It was always moving. A name like Wendt carries that borderland tension. It may have begun as an outsider label. It may have marked someone as Wendyish, Slavic, or from a region associated with those people. And over time, that label became a family name. This is not a weaker identity. It is a deeper one, because it reveals the truth beneath the myth. Your surname may not point to one simple tribe. It may point to a meeting place of worlds, a place where languages touched, where cultures blended, where history tried to divide people, but families crossed the line anyway. And now we come to number one. A name connected not only to region, but to one of the strongest old Saxon identities in German history. Number one, Westphal or Westphal. This name may point toward Westphalia, and Westphalia is deeply connected to old Saxon lands. That is why this name is so powerful. At first, Westphal sounds like a regional surname. Someone from Westphalia, a person marked by place. But beneath that place is an older world. Westphalia was one of the major regions tied to the Saxons. So a surname like Westphal may carry both geography and tribal memory. It is not just from the West. It is not just a point on the map. It may be a surviving sign of a world where Saxon identity, local loyalty, and regional power shaped how people saw themselves. Imagine a family leaving Westphalia and entering another town. People do not know their full story. They simply call them the Westphalian, and that name follows the children, then the grandchildren, then the great-grandchildren, until one day, centuries later, someone looks at the surname and realizes it was never empty. It was a trail marker, a clue, a quiet witness. The name Westphal may carry the weight of old Saxon territory, medieval memory, and the kind of regional pride that does not disappear easily. And that is why this final name matters, because it shows the real secret behind many surnames. A surname may not give you the whole truth, but it can give you the first door. Behind that door may be a region. Behind the region may be a people. Behind the people may be a forgotten story your family carried without speaking. And maybe that is why surnames feel so strange when you really listen to them. They are ordinary until you ask where they came from. Then they become haunted. Sachs, Franke, Bayer, Schwab, Alemann, Friese, Hess, Thüringer, Wendt, Westphal. Each one is more than a sound. Each one may be a trace, a mark left by migration, a label given by strangers, a memory of a homeland, a piece of a tribe that history tried to bury. But we also have to say the truth clearly. A surname alone cannot prove your entire bloodline. It cannot tell you every ancestor, every marriage, every migration, or every hidden branch in your family tree. But it can point, and sometimes pointing is enough to begin the search. Because Germany was not born in one clean moment. It was formed from forests and rivers, tribes and duchies, invasions and alliances, old gods and church bells, borderlands and battles, farmers and warriors, merchants and migrants. It was built by people who carried names before they carried passports. And in some families, those names still remain. So the next time you hear a German surname, do not treat it like a dead word. Listen to it. Ask what land it remembers. Ask what people stood behind it. Ask what your ancestors may have carried without knowing that one day, centuries later, you would be the one to ask. Because your surname may not just tell people who you are. It may tell you who came before you. And maybe hidden inside those few letters, there's still a road leading back through the dark forest toward the first people who carried your name. Did you hear your surname in this list? Or do you have a German last name you want explained in a future video? Write it in the comments, because your family name may be hiding a story older than you think. And if you want more videos uncovering the hidden meanings behind European surnames, bloodlines, tribes, and forgotten ancestral roots, subscribe now and watch the next video on screen.